Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to Spirit Rock. My name's Doug. I'm the manager for tonight. Please come get me if I can be of any help. In addition to those who are physically with us here tonight, we want to welcome those who are online as well. People from all over the world, from all countries and various states. Spirit Rock celebrates the diversity in our community, regardless of your color, culture, gender, orientations, ages, and life experiences. You're welcome here, and we invite you to fully take your place in the circle of community. I have a couple of announcements before we begin. Restrooms are at the end of the lobby, and we also have cookies for sale out in the lobby. Please, please, please silence any electronic devices that you have with you today. Please, no beeps or buzzes. Please do not walk above the Dharma gate or upstairs here in the CMC as we have other events happening. Finally, I want to make a land acknowledgement. Spirit Rock is located in the San Geronimo Valley of West Marin County, California, on unceded Coast Miwok territory. We name the history of this beloved place as a gesture of respect toward the indigenous residents of this colonized land that we now call home. So, thank you very much for your presence here tonight, and without any further ado, I'd like to hand things over to our founder and beloved teacher, Jack Kornfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you have someone get me a cup of hot water?
Cup of hot.
Please. Good evening. What a pleasure. It was very sweet arriving because I came about an hour ago and it was just finishing getting dark and there was a little bit of the moon and the kind of not quite black sky yet, still lit up a little bit. And it's actually a beautiful night out there. It's cold too, it's winter, but it's gorgeous. And you are too, so what to say? Yeah, thank you for being here. This is now maybe the 41st or second year of the Monday night sitting group that we started. For a lot of years, it was in the trailers that we had here in the meadow, and before that in the Fairfax Community Church and so forth. Some of you who are that old may even remember. And the point of it has been to come together to remember what it's like to quiet our minds and tend the heart and be together in some sense of community doing so. And of course, having some teachings or conversation, all of those are important. And Spirit Rock has grown over these decades, and it has so many programs of short and long retreats and trainings and practices, and had thousands of people come through. I think, when we look at the world, and there's actually a phrase, the world, in the Sanskrit and Bali Buddhist texts, and it's not like the world whoopee, it's like the world, oh yeah, right. But at this time in the world, to have places of refuge, and places where we steady the heart and quiet ourselves is really important and valuable as a reminder, as a support. Thank you, Helga. So what we usually do on Monday night is to do a meditation for a time, take a break, 5 minutes to stretch, and then some teachings followed by some dialogue or questions and response and so forth. And tonight is also the launch, I don't know what the right word is, a celebration for this new book that came out this last week. And I was reading it. I got a copy. It's kind of fun to actually get it when it's like finally printed, and it's different than all the drafts and the electronic versions. And I had been feeling like ambivalent about it. It's okay. And then I read it, I really like this. This is actually pretty good. Now here, what's also true, I got a call from the publisher, Sounds True Macmillan, saying I had done this beautiful course on great teaching stories. And would I like to write a book about that? And I listened and I said, I'm not really in the mood to write another book. I've got 16 published books. I hardly have an unpublished thought, And I've got other things to do. And they said, well, how about if we take those teachings and edit and turn them into a book, and then you can add things and fix it up. And I said, that's the kind of writing I like. Thank you, right? So they did, and they gave it to me, and I added a lot of things that I like or love. But that's sort of how it came about. And I'll be reading and talking from that and other things about what I think is really helpful for us. But to start for tonight, and I'm particularly aware that this is Thanksgiving week, and I've been teaching an online course on forgiveness, and I had my class today online for these people who are taking it, and we talked about the forgiveness between the Northern Irish Protestants and Catholics, or the Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda, or the Republicans and Democrats in the U.S., or what, and I said, so, what does this teaching on forgiveness really touch for you? And people raised their hand electronically, conversation. And it was all about their families. Forget Ireland, forget Ukraine. I'm going home, and I need some practices for that. And I reminded them that the Buddha and Jesus both had trouble when they went home, so they should expect that that's part of the game. Family is family, right? And it's wonderful, it's family, and it's other things than that. And so tonight I want us, as we sit, to do a guided loving kindness meditation. And I'll talk about it a tiny bit, and then we'll do it. The loving kindness meditation as a practice was taught, as best we know. All these are kind of mythological stories as well that have been passed down for a couple of thousand years and more. But apparently, there was a group of ardent monks and nuns who were meditating with the Buddha, and they went out into the forests so they could practice ardently. And at nighttime, they got frightened because there were sounds of wild animals and unknown things. That was the equivalent of watching the news, by the way, now, right? It does the same thing to our nervous system, right? And they came running back and said, what do we do? It's dangerous, it's scary out there. And the Buddha said, let me give you a practice that will help you deal with the kind of fears that come. And that was the first occasion to teach loving kindness meditation. When you go back into the jungle or watch the news or whatever wild thing you do, to have that as a basis to tend and care for your own heart. Now, one of the things that's cool about it, and you'll see as we go through the pedagogy, you start where it's easy. You don't do loving kindness meditation and decide, okay, I'm going to start with whoever you consider the bad guys. I'm using that particular gender on purpose, right? There are a bunch of them, you may have noticed. But you don't start there. You actually start where it's most natural and loving and easy, and you soften the heart and you open it and you do a few more, and then you go to, people that are a little bigger than just the close ones to you, and you wish them well and happiness and safety and so forth. And eventually, if you go through the progression over time, traditionally you go through neutral people. Neutral people are the ones that you kind of notice that person at the checkout place at your grocery store that you go regularly, or that person, whether it's the post office or someplace that, you see people, but you don't have really much thought about them. And then you expand from that to mildly difficult people. Do any of you have mildly difficult people? Don't raise your hands, right? And then you go on from there. The neutral people is actually kind of interesting. I was doing a retreat on my own of metta at Santa Sabina in San Rafael. Oh, it's a couple of decades ago or more, and I was practicing metta, going through it systematically. Okay, who's going to be my neutral person? And there was a gardener there, this guy, who I would see periodically coming and trimming and cutting and so forth, and I'd nod to him. I was being quiet. So I spent a day wishing him well. It was part of my long metta retreat. Safe, protected, happy. That was my practice. Of course, it made me happy. And then I carried on my practice. And about 2 days later, I went downstairs and out toward the garden. And around the corner came this guy. And I looked up and I said, "Oh, my neutral person, I love you," right? And it just changed the whole valence of my care, because I had invited him in a regular way into my heart and realized, oh, we're in relation to one another. Now, this is a non sequitur, but I'm going to say it anyway. 2 days ago, I did a day-long teaching here on inner technology for outer technology. Some of it was designers and people who are creating outer technology. Some of it was just people talking about, how do I use this, or how do my kids use it, or whatever. And a lot of it, to start with, beside training inner technology of calm and steady and clarity, was recognizing that we're in relationship to technology, that it's actually a relationship and we're embedded in it. We are, And you'll notice behind me this beautiful Chinese Kuan Yin, and usually she's depicted in the tankas with hundreds or thousands of arms serving and eyes to see the whole world and reach out, all these hands. Now she's just, she can do it online. She's checking, trying to stay connected to everybody. Anyhow, it's said when you do metta, loving kindness practice, that there are many blessings that come as your heart trains itself to be open and kind and loving. And some of these are, there's a list of 40. The Buddha was a list maker. Your dreams become sweet. You fall asleep more easily. I mean, that's enough already, right? You waken contented. Your thoughts are pleasant as you cultivate loving kindness. Your health improves. Angels and devas will love and protect you even if you don't believe in them, right? Animals will sense your love and not harm you. I think that was part of the Buddha's teaching for those monks and nuns. People will welcome you everywhere. Your babies will be happy in the womb and growing up. If you pass by an elephant, it will nod and bow and honor your loving kindness. It says, you can go to the zoo. If you lose things, they will be returned to you. If you fall off a cliff, a tree will always be there to catch you, right? And the world be more peaceful and loving around you. So, those are some of the 40 benefits. Which one reflects if you're in like a monastery in Burma or Thailand or so forth, you actually do this little recitation. Okay, now I'm motivated, right? I'm waiting for the elephant, I'm gonna do it. So let's do a bit of practice together. One more thing is there is one basic instruction for all the kinds of meditation, and there are many, many kinds that you do, and that is not to use it to judge yourself. Oh, I'm no good at this metta, loving kindness. I must be a bad person. I can't do it, You know how it is. Your unworthiness. It's actually kind of boring, but we won't go there for a moment. Honestly, come on, you're bigger than that. But anyway, you don't want to use this with some ideal. It might be that your attention wanders. It might be that you hate it. And that's the dance in meditation isn't try to fix that, but it's to get curious. I wonder why so much hatred is arising when I'm trying to do metta. Well, I'm really pissed at that person, right? Which it can happen. I mean, one morning I was leading a retreat years ago, and it was my time to go in. I was scheduled to lead the loving kindness meditation, and I'd had a bad fight with my wife at the time, my ex, and she said a bunch of things that were really wrong, we'll say, bad. And I was sitting there kind of steaming, but it was my job to say, all right, now think of someone you care about and send them some thoughts, may you be safe and well. And I'd be quiet. I think, I'm going to call that. I'm going to talk to her and straighten. Okay, now think of someone else you love. And it was so interesting because the mind has no pride, right? It will do anything. And so the practice is to hold all of that in kindness, to hold your humanity, the tainted glory of your humanity, all of it in loving kindness, all the difficult and beautiful and amazing and, horrifying parts that you all have, that we have as humans. Okay. Sit comfortably. It's very hard to do metta if your knees are killing you, right? And with metta, there's meditations on gratitude and thanks, forgiveness. But here we'll start really simply. Let your body be settled and at ease and in a comfortable posture. And notice how it's breathing itself, and invite a kind of calm and gentleness to simply hold this breathing body kindly. Notice the stillness, the invitation for things to settle down. Even if there's repeated thoughts or emotions, let them rise and fall like the waves of the ocean. And around them is just a kindness, a field of loving awareness that notices it all without judging, trying to change. Just a loving presence for all of your humanity. And now let yourself think of, or remember, or picture in your mind's eye someone who you have a natural feeling of love or kindness for. You know, some person or being where it's not conflicted. Basically, there's a natural caring. It could be a child, a friend. It could even be your dog. You come home and wags its tail. It doesn't judge you. And you picture this being. And first of all, with this child, this person, you just gaze at them with your mind's eye and feel your natural caring. It's there. And then in your own way, begin to wish them well. And there are some traditional phrases I'll use, but you can modify them in whatever way feels right to your heart. You picture this being. May you be safe and protected. May you be well in body and mind. Yes, may you be healthy and strong. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you hold your struggles in compassion. Every being has their measure of struggles. And may you be peaceful and happy inwardly. And you can repeat it again with whatever language. You gaze at them. May you be safe, protected. You want this for them. May you be well and healthy. May you be filled with loving kindness, held in it. May your struggles be held in compassion. May your heart be peaceful and happy. And now bring into the heart and mind another person that you care about. Again, where it's easy and natural, not terribly conflicted. And picture them, remember them, think of them. And let the loving kindness open to include them in that field of care. You gaze at them. May you too be safe and protected. May you be healthy and well. May you be filled with kindness. May you hold your struggles with compassion. All your struggles so kindly. May your heart be peaceful and happy, truly happy. And notice what it feels like to begin this well-wishing to beings you care about. And now imagine these two standing across from you, gazing back at you. And they look at you with kindly eyes. And they say, just as you wish this well-being and love for us, we want to wish it for you. We want to return it. Because they also care. And you imagine or sense or picture that they're looking at you kindly and say, may you too be safe and protected. They want this for you. May you be healthy and well. May you be filled with kindness. May you hold your struggles with compassion. They're gazing at you. Hold your struggles with compassion, kindness. And may your heart be peaceful and happy. Peaceful and happy. And take in their good wishes. And if you're comfortable, put a hand on your heart. They're teaching you. And as they gaze kindly, you accept this and you say, it's hard. May I be safe and protected, just as they want for you. May I stay safe and protected. They wish this for you. May I be well and healthy, strong. May it be so. Like you're blessing yourself and they're with you. May I be filled with kindness toward myself and the whole world. May I hold my struggles in compassion. You know what they are. Hold them all kindly. And may my heart be peaceful and happy. And let it sink in, this well-wishing, just as you wish this for these loved ones and friends. So they gaze at you and say, you too, held in the field of loving kindness. Now expand it, open the heart further, and picture another person you want to add, where it feels like you're called to wish them well. Again, not a tough one, but a natural one. May you be safe and protected. May you be well and strong. May you be filled with kindness. May you hold your struggles in compassion, great compassion. May your heart be peaceful and happy. And now expand it further. Think of a group of people. Could be a group of family coming to Thanksgiving dinner, or friends or co-workers. Some group that you know. And there they are, arising in your mind's eye and your heart. And you surround them with loving kindness, even though they're a mixed bag of humanity. Your loving kindness is way bigger. And you wish them well. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and well. May you all be filled with kindness. Remember and dwell and live in kindness. May you hold your struggles in compassion. And may your hearts be peaceful and happy. And let the field of loving kindness that's growing in you now extend, shine out like a lighthouse in all the directions, in front of you and behind, to left and right, above and below, wishing beings in every direction on this land, all the animals, the badgers and worms and mountain lions and crows, all the beings of this place, be happy and protected. And then out across the land, across the valleys and waters, beings in the cities, beings in the countryside. And now the light of loving kindness shines in every direction. May all the beings everywhere, far and near, young and old, may you all be safe and protected. Wishing them well. May you be well and healthy, all the beings, omitting none, everyone. May you all be filled with kindness. And may you feel a compassion for your struggles. Hold them in compassion. And may your hearts be at peace, whoever you are, wherever you are, beings of every kind. May your hearts be at peace and find a true happiness. And you become the lighthouse of loving kindness, illuminating all directions with care. And staying with this quality of loving kindness, allow your eyes to open and look around at the beings sitting near you. Catch their eye, check them out, and continue to wish them well, each one. May you be safe. May you be protected. May you be strong and healed. May you be filled with kindness, each of you. Look around. Wish them well. You can do it. I know it's weird, but you can do it. It's not really that hard. May you hold your struggles in compassion. Anybody in this room not have struggles? Raise your hand. Okay, we got that. Hold it with kindness, every one of you. And may your hearts be at peace. You and you and you and you. Hearts be at peace. What a nice thing to wish. Be at peace, be happy. Wow, be happy. It's okay. As Guillaume Apollinaire said, sometimes it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness and just be happy. All right, so we're going to take a pause for a moment of a different kind, and I want to ask you how that was. You can raise your hand if you have any observations or reports, or comments, just for a little bit before we take our break. How was that? Was it hard? Pedagogically, the reason I started with other people is because most folks find it very hard to do loving kindness for themselves. It feels like squirmy and I don't deserve it and all that kind of stuff comes up. So you picture people you care about and then they look at you and say, yeah, you too, you get in the circle as well. So in the back, there's somebody.
Can you please explain a little further on having compassion for your struggles?
Could I explain compassion for yourself? Was that what you asked? I want to understand. I get it. Well, please.
Well, how do you have compassion for a struggle?
How do you have compassion for your struggle? Okay. What makes you ask?
Sitting here listening.
Put it close to your mouth.
Sitting here listening to the meditation, and then my mind going, how do I have compassion for a struggle, and missing the next thing that you were saying. I kind of got stuck on that, if I'm honest.
What are the kinds of things you struggle with? Is it in family or friends or politics, or where's your struggle?
Oh, I think it's all of the above.
All
and
of the
things.
above. Okay, check box 2, 3, 4. So one of the things about struggle, thank you for that, this is good, is that it's very easy to judge yourself. Okay, I'm struggling with the conflicts in my family or the political climate, or I'm struggling with the way people are behaving at work or something like that. That's part of being human, that we kind of find our way in the struggle. There are different ways you can hold it. One is to judge yourself or just get in it and be right. And then you notice how that works for you. When you live in that, you're shaking your head. Like, maybe that's not where you want to live. So instead, you realize, okay, this is being human, to have a struggle in family and community and close people and work and so forth. Let me be kind and compassionate. Everybody's having, to deal with their human life. And they don't always do it very beautifully or graciously. Sometimes they make a mess of it, or they're hard for us. And instead of a lot of judgment, you say, let me just hold this with kindness, compassion. So that's a beginning of an answer. How does that land? Your hand, anything more to say? Your hands are up.
No, that was thumbs up. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's part of being human. It just is. Someone else? One more in the back.
It's been 50 years, and I have to say I am just amazed, because 50 years ago I could not stand to do loving kindness. I just hated it, and it was
magnificent. This is great. You hated
difficult.
it. I love it. Keep going.
And I am just so amazed. It is, that is the best loving kindness I have ever had. And it's just completely different. And so I just want to say that, persist. And I had to start out with my cat, because I could not stand to do it for anyone else. And I certainly could not stand to do it for myself, but I could feel it from my cat. And it's just so different here 50 years later. Little by little, it's changed. And I don't think that I actually realized it until tonight.
A
So
testimonial. We love it. Yeah.
I am so.
We are all your cats now, really. And it says something. That's why it's called practice rather than perfect.
Yeah. I'm just so amazed and so grateful.
Yeah.
And I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you both for these comments and questions because they're important. All right, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then there'll be some teachings, and then there'll be some more dialogue. Sound okay? Want to stretch? And those of you online, thank you as well, and we'll resume in 5 minutes. So, you online people and campers here, I just got back to California not that many days ago. Trudy and I went to India, and we went to Dharamsala for a Mind and Life Institute meeting with the Dalai Lama and a number of lamas and contemplatives and a bunch of scientists focusing on AI. And the Dalai Lama was not really teaching much now at 90, but he did blessings, and I got to have a little conversation with him, which was wonderful. Somebody asked him, do you think AI can feel compassion? And he reflected and he said, can it feel pain? You know, he's got this great kind of mind to turn things around, you know, and the technologist building it said, I don't think so. And then the Dalai Lama said, well, if it can't feel pain, it won't feel compassion. So that's a really interesting thing, that actually, in order to have compassion, we have to be able to feel. We are in relationship. This is like two different kind of minds, the silicon mind and the whatever human mind. And I mean, how many of you spend a fair amount of time engaged between your computers, your phone, your, you know, the television, electronic media? I mean, for most of us, it's a big chunk of our time. So our lives are woven together. And part of the conference and the question was, but how do we have a wise relationship to it in ourselves? And then also, how do we steer it so that it actually is beneficial for humanity? And then we went to Varanasi, which is perhaps the oldest existing city in the world on the banks of the Ganges. And you go out on the river. We stayed right on the Ganges River. And there are the ghats, which are the docks. And there's the bathing ghat, where people come down and bathe because they're going in the holy Ganges, right? And there's the laundry ghat, where there's all these sheets that people have been washing, you know, laid out on all the steps. You know, there's the cow ghat, where all the cows are tied up and so forth. There's the burning ghat, which is amazing, because especially when you go at night, it feels like you're into Dante's lower realms, kind of, because there's always fires burning and bodies that are there. And about every 20 minutes, some people will be, through the day and through the night, will be carrying a bamboo stretcher with a person's body wrapped in silk and chanting Ram Nam Satya Hai. The only truth is the truth of God, and then deliver it, put it on a pyre with some wood. And so there's always bodies burning there. They carry them through the streets. And you might think it's sort of like gruesome or weird or something. But there you are, and you notice, if you pay attention, that there are beggars in Varanasi, especially along the river, the old ancient part of the city. And tied in their shawl in the corner are enough coins to pay for the wood for the fire, for their cremation. And you might look at them with a lot of pity, like, oh, what a struggle, your life, there you are, a beggar. And they look back at you and they go, you don't get it. I'm in Varanasi. Varanasi is the portal to the realm of liberation, to the awakened, liberated space of life and heart. And anyone who's cremated in Varanasi, you're saved in the deepest way. And they look and say, you think I'm in trouble? How about you, baby? You know, and it just melds your mind in these different directions, which is really good, because we're all in it together, basically. So anyway, we had this trip to India and other places. And then I came back and this book came out. And it's a lot of my favorite stories, some of them long and short. And I'm basically a storyteller. I love telling stories. And some of them you'll have heard, or they're repeats. I don't mind repeating a story. It's sort of like kids saying, read that one again, right? It's not like, because these are not the kind of stories that, read the next one. You can do that, but read that one again. And for me, stories are a medicine. And that's really what's in this book. There's stories for healing, stories of medicine, stories of awakening, stories of community. But we need it. And some of it is stories that have some humor in them, a little bit, or poignant. The story of a little boy who goes out with his parents, he's 7 years old, to the restaurant to have dinner. And the waitress comes to take their order. And she says, what will you have, the little boy? He said, I'd like a hot dog and a Coke. And his mother said, he'll have the meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and milk. And then the waitress goes around and takes the rest of the orders. And as she's leaving the table, she turns back to that little boy and says, do you want ketchup or mustard on your hot dog? And this big grin, and he says, she thinks I'm real. Okay? So there's something both poignant and humorous. And I was teaching up here at some point with some Tibetan Lama and cracking jokes or whatever. And he said, I get it. He said, you get them to laugh, and then when their mouths are open, you can pop the pill of wisdom in. And I thought, well, that's a kind of nice interpretation of it. But there's something else in it, too. Ram Dass talked about how his life was transformed when he met his guru. And he tells the same story over and over again. And he went there, and oh my God, another Indian guru. And, he meets the guru, and his guru starts messing with him. That's a really nice car. The Land Rover you drove up here, that'd be great for the guru. Would you maybe think about giving that? And he says, oh my God, what a huckster with this guy, right? He's got all this. And they sit, and they talk a little bit, and they get quiet. And then the guru says, come close. And he says, last night, under the stars, your mother, he's being translated from Hindi into English, you were thinking about her. Ram Dass says, well, that's not such a magic thing. You think about your mother. And he said, big belly, right? Ram Dass goes, And then his guru says in English, which he doesn't speak, spleen. And Ram Dass' mind just kind of breaks open. He said, wait a second, did the CIA come and tell him about my life? How could he know that I was thinking about mother who died this year of cancer, of spleen? And so when his guru then was training him and looked at him, there's a phrase in English in India called the glance of mercy, where your guru or this person looks at you, and as Ram Dass said, they can see into your soul, and they love you anyway. Like, how could that be? Really? They see how weird you are in every part, and they can say you're completely worthy of love. And it changes you. It kind of changes your DNA. So that's one of his favorite stories. And what it does is it invites us to imagine what it would be like to be seen in that way, or maybe to see ourselves in that way. Somebody gave me recently, I was in Hawaii actually, and I met up with these old friends, and they said, do you remember more than 50 years ago, and I had this book. Some of you may know the book of Frog and Toad. Those are great children's stories. This is a book of George and Martha, who are hippopotami, by James Marshall. I don't even know if it's still in print. I love the images. 5 stories about 2 great friends. Here's story number 1. It's not going to take that long to read. Martha was very fond of making split pea soup. Sometimes she made it all day long, pots and pots of split pea soup. And here she is in her skirt or apron in the kitchen. If there was one thing that George was not fond of, it was split pea soup. He's frowning. George hated split pea soup. You can hear a kid like smiling, of course. Ew, I hate, he hated it more than anything else in the world. This is the way a child thinks, right? But it was so hard to tell Martha. One day after George had eaten 10 bowls of Martha's soup, he said to himself, I just can't stand another bowl, not even another spoonful. So while Martha was in the kitchen, George carefully poured the rest of his soup into his loafers under the table. Now she will think, I have eaten it. How many of you as a kid hid food? You know you did. I know you did. We all did. Okay. But Martha was watching from the kitchen. So there's this picture of his shoes getting filled with split pea soup. Last page. How do you expect to walk home with your loafers full of split pea soup? She asked George. Oh dear, said George, you saw me. And why didn't you tell me that you hate my split pea soup? I didn't want to hurt your feelings, said George. That's silly, said Martha. Friends should always tell each other the truth. As a matter of fact, I don't like split pea soup very much myself. I just like to make it. From now on, you'll never have to eat that awful soup again. What a relief, said George as he sighed. Would you like some chocolate chip cookies instead? Asked Martha. Oh, that will be lovely, said George. Then you shall have them. And she placed a plate of chocolate chip cookies on the table. Like 4 pages, very, very short. But stories tell us things, and yes, it's for little kids, but it's the way we hide things from one another, And what does it mean to actually connect with each other in a more genuine way, in a kind way? So what I hoped from this book is that these are stories that touch the heart, that you read and you go, oh, yes. See if I can find this story. Many of you have heard these stories. I didn't put down the page number. Just reflecting for a moment. Can I tell it well enough? I'll try. So this is the story of a middle school teacher who was starting in her first year of teaching. And she says, in my classroom, I had one particularly difficult young woman. It was now 8th grade. She said she would interrupt the class. She would stand up and walk around. She would make rude comments. She would disrupt what we were doing. And I tried every intervention that a teacher knows. I made contracts with her. I praised her. I gave her special things that she could work toward. I threatened her in some way, what would happen, And I went into the teacher's lounge, and the teachers looked at me and said, oh, you have Shay in your class. We're so sorry. Maybe you should transfer her out. But she said, I'm a new teacher. I'm going to keep the students they give me, and I will work with them. And so it continued through much of the year like that, not easy. The last day came, and the class was dismissed, and She said, I watched Shay walk out the door and thought, well, that was a failure. And then, about 15 minutes later, as I was gathering my things at the end of the school year, in walks Shay, this woman. I had called her home, no one answered. I tried to talk to her family. I'm not sure she even had family that paid attention to her. And what is she doing back? I thought, one more last act of terrorism in my classroom. And she marched right up to me and thrust into my hand a little bowl, the kind that students make in ceramics class, right? And on the bottom it had her name inscribed, Shay. And she looked at me, she handed me the bowl, and she said, thank you for trying to like me. And then turned around and walked out. I never have left that bowl out of my classroom. Then I became a school principal and a superintendent, and Shay's bowl is right there on my desk. This is the work that we have to do. And these are the kind of stories that are in here that just remind us of what it means to meet each other with some deep respect. There's this wonderful long story, many of you know, of Sir Gawain and the Loathly Lady, this great ancient, tale told in different places. Chaucer told a version of it. And the essence of this story is the question that was posed to Sir Gawain by the hag that he meets in the deep, dark forest to kind of help him get out of the forest is, what do women want? And he said, he can't figure it out. And he says, all right, give me a year. And he goes around and has this big, old book of the kind and asks everybody and comes back and he doesn't have the right answer. And then there's a very magic kind of ending to it. Part of that story, which leads the first section, is, along with that story of the little 7-year-old boy and the waitress, is a section of seeing each other with respect. What does that mean? Even the Dalai Lama has used the phrase, my friend's the enemy, that he's unwilling to put them out of his heart, even though they're functioning in their role as an enemy. Where are we? Page 215. So I'm reading you some stories. They're ones I like. Tell me the weight of a snowflake, a small bird, a titmouse asked a wild dove. Nothing more than nothing was the answer. In that case, I must tell you a marvelous story. And this story is really for all of you who have some sense of despair in these times. Wade Davis, the great explorer, says despair is a failure of imagination, that we can imagine something bigger than the troubles we're in. In that case, I'll tell you a marvelous story. And the titmouse says, I sat on the branch of a fir tree close to the trunk when it began to snow. Not heavily, not in a giant blizzard, no, just like in a dream, without any violence. Since I didn't have anything better to do, I counted the snowflakes settling on the twigs and needles of my branch. Their number was exactly 3,741,952. When the next snowflake dropped onto the branch, nothing more than nothing, as you say, the branch broke off. Having said that, the titmouse flew away, and the dove, since snow is time and authority about change in the world, thought about the story for a moment and finally said, perhaps there's only one person's voice lacking for peace to come about in this world. So it's a really beautiful reminder that we don't know. We don't know what will tip what will break the branch off, what will tip the direction that we go. But we have the opportunity to reach out and mend something in the fabric of life. And if you don't do it out of contraction or fear or, despair or, overwhelm or those kind of things, it actually leaves you stuck in a sorrowful place. And it's action that somehow undoes anxiety. And it's making even the tiniest difference, to others that begins to change the direction of your life, the circumstance, and the circumstance of the world around you. There's stories of my teacher, Ajahn Chah, and two that I've told lately. One of Ajahn Chah. In the morning, we would go out with our alms bowl just at dawn and walk for 5 miles or however long it was barefoot to the nearby villages. And the villagers would wait and offer food into the bowls. Mostly it was the older women who would wait. They were the ones who got up early and cooked, and they'd put food in the monk's bowl. They sort of adopted us. We were kind of like their pets or something, They loved us, and they would come to the temple, and we'd be trying to meditate and get enlightened and stuff. And on every week, their new moon, quarter moon, whatever, there'd be an all-night sit, and we'd be kind of meditating. And these women, they would sit down. They were the great yogis, actually. We thought we were cool. They were much better. And they sort of, okay, we'll feed you. We'll take care of you. It was very sweet. But anyway, so we were crossing the little dike in the rice paddies, and there was this giant boulder across the field. And Ajahn Chah said to the monks who were with him in this little group, "Monks, is that boulder heavy?" And, being Ivy League educated, yes, it is, right? And he smiled and he said, "Not if you don't pick it up." And there was so much wisdom in that tiny little interaction about how we deal with this world. Yeah, you can see it, but do you pick it up? You have a choice. Yeah. So there's a long story in here about Vimalakirti, who's a great Mahayana bodhisattva. And it's really a story of dueling spiritual teachers, I'm sure you would never imagine that great bodhisattvas and spiritual teachers would have conflict unless, well, in my industry, the swamis and lamas and mamas and whatever they are, they have their differences. And sometimes it's not even very pretty. But anyway, it's a story of how they work this out. And of course, it turns everything on its head because the protagonist, and the Buddha sends them to help Vimalakirti, who is pretending to be sick. And so all these great bodhisattvas go to take care of this layperson who's supposed to be much lower on the spiritual totem pole. And of course, he one-ups all of them, And it's sort of great because it's like, what are your ideas about how you should be as a spiritual person? And these are accounts that are modern as well as ancient because they're part of our human character and how we work with each other, how we judge. There's a long story in here of the Buddha's last year of his life. And it tells about all the different things he encountered in his last year at age 80, which happens to be my age, and what was difficult and what was important and what his last teachings were and reminders and people coming. And then how he died and how that affected people. And the story begins, and the text actually, with a phrase that's pretty much like once upon a time. Because these big stories, Vimalakirti or, Sir Gawain, or the big story of the Buddha's last year, are really kind of mythological stories which is to say they're archetypal or universal, and as you read them, you find yourself somewhere in that story. Are you that person coming, beseeching the Buddha, give me the last teachings because I didn't quite get it. This is my last time. Come on, help me, you know. Or are you the person who gives him his last meal, but it turns out that he gets sick from that meal when you read this story. And then that person feels really bad, like, wow, I'm the person that, you know, gave the Buddha dysentery. What kind of bad karma is that? And then the Buddha calls him in and says, you don't understand. The first meal and the last meal are like the holiest meals that you can do. It doesn't matter what happened to my body. It was ready anyway. You are blessed because your intention was so pure. And what matters is really the intention of the heart. And so you read and you get these kind of reminders. There are stories of conflict resolution because, well, let's see. There's one of these. Because in case you have noticed or not noticed, we are in times of conflict, right? Political the poly crisis, right? Climate, AI, political divisiveness, continuing warfare, continuing racism. What do we do with this? So this story, in the early years of the Iraq War, in the New Yorker, an article described how a small unit of American soldiers were assigned to go to the holy city of Najaf, one of the holy cities of Iraq. This was a delicate mission, as the presence of the Americans in uniform was seen as a desecration of this sacred place. When they approached one of the most revered mosques, hundreds of Iraqis poured out of the buildings on either side, fists waving, shouting, throats taut. They pressed in on the 15 Americans. The reporter witnessing it said he felt afraid. The Americans glanced at one another in terror, and they were afraid that a shot would come from somewhere. Someone would open fire, and it would turn into a massacre. Quite suddenly, in the middle of it all, the American officer in charge stopped, held his rifle high over his head with the barrel pointed to the ground, and stood there against the backdrop of a seething crowd that was almost 1,000 people deep now, shouting. It was a striking gesture, he wrote, almost biblical. And then he took a knee. The officer, his eyes hidden behind his mirrored sunglasses, held his position and instructed his men to follow. The soldiers looked at him as if he were crazy, and then one after another, swaying in their bulky body armor and gear, they knelt before the boiling crowd, pointed their guns at the ground in the same position as their officer, and the crowd fell silent. Their anger subsided, and the officer ordered his men to withdraw. Dan Baum, the writer of the story, said it took him months to track down Lieutenant Colonel Chris Hughes, the officer in this account. When he found him, he asked Colonel Hughes, who had taught him to calm a crowd by pointing his rifle down and kneeling in a war zone in a distant country. The colonel replied that while they would typically fire warning shots in such a situation, the problem with doing so is that the next thing that happens is people start shooting for real. He went on to say, the Iraqis felt that their presence of these armed American soldiers was disrespectful to their mosque, to their religion, to the culture of this holy city, and that the obvious solution was a gesture of respect. What do we need in our lives, in the conflicts in our lives, in the conflicts of the world? You know, to be able to meet one another with that kind of respect, changes everything. And of course, I like to talk about this often because one of the key teachings is that more than anything, intention has a great power in your life. Contention is kind of the root of karma. Say, what does that mean? Well, all right, suppose that there's a person who backs out of his driveway and then hits the gas and crashes through the fence of the house next door into the living room. Now, suppose that that person who did that was really upset because his next door neighbor cut down all the big, beautiful trees on their joint property line, and he was, how do you say it, a little bit pissed off by that. If that happened, the police would come, the blue lights, and they would haul him away. On the other hand, suppose when he backed out of his driveway that the accelerator pedal stuck and he couldn't help it and it crashed through the fence and into that person's house. People would come out and say, are you okay? Is it all right? It wouldn't be the police. It might be an ambulance if you were hurt. The exact same act, crashing through the fence into the house, right? What made the difference? What made the difference was the intention. So intention is incredibly important in how we resolve our conflicts, how we deal with one another. And one of the most significant tools that you have in conflict with other people, should that happen in your life, or if you're in a little argument with the people that you love a lot, but they're not behaving the way you wish they would. It would never happen to me as a teacher, of course, but just in case, I'm married to a Dharma teacher, we would never have an argument. Anyway, if you take a breath in the middle of it, you take a mindful pause, just half a minute, and you ask yourself, what's my best intention? There you are. And you realize, well, my best intention is actually to work this out or to love this person or to figure out our way. If you ask, what's my heart's best intention? And almost immediately it changes your tone of voice, your eyes soften, and instead of working to be right, because of course I am right? But it's not about being right. Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy, basically? And so you, with that, checking in with your intention is the one of how do we commune, how do we find love? In a moment, your demeanor changes and that person feels it. And all of a sudden, with that kind of respect and care, you're in a different movie and a much more benevolent one. So there's another story in here. I'm just telling stories. Is that okay? Do you mind? I mean, that's what we're doing tonight, right? And then we'll take some time for dialogue. I led a men's retreat here some years ago with good friends, Robert Hall, Tisha Bell, Wes Nisker. We led a series of them. And in the evening, after we had sat together for the day, we would have a kind of council. We'd sit in a circle, and then Robert or one of them would raise a question for the men. Let's talk about money. What's your relationship to money? And all these men who never talked about that, really, unless it was their business. Or let's talk about sex. And it would come out. Or let's talk about the things that really are there in our lives. And the men would come together, and maybe he'd make a circle, and 6 or 8 men would come and talk about what they were struggling with. And all the other men would be nodding, yeah, me too, right? And it was anyway, one of the themes was also talking about what's our relationship to the men who are much less well off than ourselves? You know, which is true for all of us. Those of us who are in this room primarily have a somewhat privileged life on this planet. And so there was a guy in that circle who said, well, I have this job, he talked about. He said, but on Sundays in LA, I'm a DJ, and I have a blues show that I do. He said, I love the blues. And he said, one day I got a letter from a man, we'll call him Joseph Brown. And it was one of those kind of letters, I get them, you can see in the upper corner from the correctional institution where it comes. And Mr. Joseph Brown wrote and said, I'm, incarcerated here, and I listened to your show. And apparently this fellow said, I have a big following in the prisons. And Joseph Brown said, I want to ask you a favor. Would you play some of the early blues greats? Muddy Waters, Blind Lemon Jefferson, some of the kind of original Mississippi John Hurt, the Delta Blues and so forth. I sure would appreciate it. So the next week, as a DJ, he read the letter out loud and he said, I'm going to play a few of these great old, Mississippi John Hurt, here you are. Here's Blind Lemon Jefferson and so forth. A couple of weeks later, a letter came to him, and said, Dear Joseph, he said, thank you for playing that music. It really touched me. This is the first time I can remember hearing my name said with respect. Because he said, this is a man who obviously knows the blues when he announced it. This is someone who's really tuned in to the origins of the blues and so forth. I thank him for asking. He said, somebody finally offered me some respect. And then we just all looked at each other as men and said, can we do that for one another? These are stories in here. It's really also mysterious. I mean, here we are, Monday night. We had 20, 25 years in the trailers. How many of you were here when we had the trailers on the land? Yeah, half of you or something like that. And so we had bigger crowds and we could have in here, but because of COVID and flu and stuff, I just wanted to keep it a little less packed in. And we had amazing, Thich Nhat Hanh came and the Dalai Lama came and, these Tibetan lamas and swamis and great various teachers and all that was fabulous. Anyway, one night, it happened to be a full moon night that also happened to be Halloween. I'm not making this up. Okay, so people came a little bit in costume and we had, candy at the door and stuff like that. And we'd arranged for the Ganden Shartsi monks to come and visit. They were touring. There are a couple of groups, one, the Gyuto Tantra Choir, and the Shartsi monks have a Tantra Choir. And they're some of the monks that do the multivocal chanting, whoa, with all the overtones. We're kind of extraordinary. So they were going to come and sing for us before our meditation. This is cool. Okay, it's Halloween. It's great. And then they said, Halloween, what's this? And we said, well, costumes. And they said, oh, we can do that too. And they opened their van. They said, we've got a lot of costumes. Let's do the skeleton dance. And pulling out this, and they all get in their skeleton costumes and go out in the meadow there under the moonlight. And they're chanting and they're dancing. And I'm going like, what kind of reality is this, that this appears in West Marin, right? How does this happen? But it's so mysterious for us. We think we're in charge. My dear friend Sharon Salzberg, she was 17 or 18 years old, a freshman at University of Buffalo, brilliant, but also with a tremendous amount of trauma. And then she got this little fellowship or something to go to India. She was interested. And the Lama Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche came to give a public lecture. And she raised her hand and she said, I'm about to go to India for the first time. Which teachers should I visit? Who should I go see? And Trungpa, who had many sides to him, shall we say, good and otherwise, but anyway, and he was quite eloquent. He looked back at her and he said, Madam, best to follow the pretense of accident. And I thought it was, profound and witty and true. How does this happen? We didn't have Spirit Rock. We looked at places in the Russian River and places, down near Santa Cruz and things that were too small, that were too large, they were far too expensive. And some of them were too far away. We wanted it to be closer to the city. And we gave up after 2 or 3 years of looking. And then a friend from Zen Center called and said, there's this piece of land in San Geronimo Valley near this little village of Woodacre where he said, it's owned by Nature Conservancy, but they want to sell it to buy rainforest land in, South America. They don't need it anymore. Do you know where Woodacre is? And I said, well, actually, my wife and I have been living in San Anselmo, but we just decided to buy a house in Woodacre. We know it very well. We've been shopping for a home here. In fact, we had our realtor, and they said, well, this place, all right. We didn't want to build a place, but they said, okay, you got to go look. And we came, and of course, it's gorgeous. And okay, it's a lot of work to build a place. And then this wonderful philanthropist from the East Coast, who was also a Dharma teacher, she wrote a note and said, I hear you're trying to buy some land and build a center. Here's a little check for you, $1 million. Okay, I thought, gee, I could go to Tahiti and live a long time with this check. But in fact, the land was $950,000, which all went to buy, 50,000 acres of rainforest. And we ended up with Spirit Rock. Why, how? We had no idea. The same for our center in Massachusetts, Insight Meditation Society. We'd rented some Boy Scout camps and done retreats in 1974 and 75. And we did our first 3-month retreat in a Catholic monastery on the coast of Maine, in Bucksport, Maine. Actually, it was next to a big logging thing, so people would be sitting and they'd hear the logs being unloaded. But anyway, we had a 3-month retreat. And when we finished, there had been a Catholic nun who came. Everybody said, wouldn't it be nice to have our own place? So we started to look. There was a team of a few very devoted students. And they looked at places, and some of them were giant, too big, some a little too far, all the usual Goldilocks, too small, too large, or something. And finally, this place, which became Insight Meditation Society in Barrie, had been a monastery for the Fathers of the Blessed Sacrament. And it had 80 little rooms, and a swimming pool, and a tennis court, and 80 acres of land, and there were 7 fathers left in there, and 3 nuns in the annex. And the problem was that it was during Jimmy Carter, and the price of oil spiked, and they were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just to heat it so it wouldn't fall apart. And they put it on the market for $2 million. And then we negotiated, and they said, how about $1 million? Of course, we didn't have anything like that at all. But they needed unloaded. Nobody wanted 80 little rooms. What do we do with that, right? So anyway, it got down to where we could buy it for $150,000. 80 acres, swimming pool, tennis court, kitchen. They said, we'll leave the pots and pans. Phenomenal. But even that was a lot of money for us ex-hippies. There were a couple of friends who had some family money, and they each threw in $15,000. We got $50,000. Okay, we got to start. And then went to the bank to borrow the other $100,000, right? And they were going to sign off for it. And the bank said, what are you doing this for? Well, we're the IMS, the Insight Meditation Society. We're going to make a meditation center. And they said, great, how much do you want? Because IMS were the same initials for the International Meditation Society of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Beatles. And at that time, that was a big thing. Oh, the Beatles are behind us, no problem. How much money, where do we sign? You know, we did not correct the misperception. They gave us the money, and you know, what can you buy for $150,000 now? You know, so something, as the Ojibwa say, sometimes I go about pitying myself, and all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. And there's something so mysterious about how things unfold. And some of them are terrible, not like it's all easy. But we live in something so huge and magnificent, and we get into small mind about how it should be. You don't know. We honestly don't know so much. So last thing I'm going to read from Thich Nhat Hanh, I think. I asked the leaf whether it was frightened because it was autumn and the other leaves were falling. The leaf told me, no. During the whole spring and summer, I was completely alive. I worked hard to help nourish the tree, and now much of me is in the tree. I'm not limited by this form. I'm also now the whole tree, and when I go back to the soil, I will continue to nourish the tree. So I don't worry at all. As I leave this branch and float to the ground, I will wave to the tree and tell her, I'll see you again very soon. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. He writes like it would be a children's book, but it's like deep children, right? That day there was a wind blowing, and after a while I saw the leaf leave the branch and float down to the soil, dancing joyfully, because as it floated, it saw itself already there in the tree again. It was so happy. I bowed my head knowing that I have a lot to learn from the leaf because it's not afraid. It knew that nothing can be born and nothing can die. And so there's something in the stories that we tell, because we come together for the Dharma, which means the law, the way things are, and it's really the truth of love. And mystery, being able to be in the presence of, it's weird, you know. It is. I don't know how you got in there in your body. Do you? You don't remember, do you? But you got here for some reason, and then you have this human body, which is a strange thing. I talk about it, the whole in which you stuff dead plants and animals and grind them up with the bones, right, and glug them through the tube, you know, and then you have eyeballs. They're weird. And ears that stick out, mine pretty far, right? And then I can wiggle my tongue and say Eiffel Tower, right? And you can see the Eiffel Tower in your mind. How? Nobody knows how that happens. Yeah, the tympanic membrane and the little electrochemical to the auditory. Eiffel Tower, come on. No one knows how it happens, right? You have a little vestigial tail reminding you of your past incarnations. You ambulate by falling one direction as a biped, catching yourself and then falling the other direction. It's a weird thing. If you don't think that's weird, pay attention when you make love. Okay, it's a cool thing to do. I love it. It's bizarre. It is. I mean, come on, let's get real, right? So here we are in this mystery, and part of our meditation, it's, yes, you quiet your mind. Yes, you see with attachment that things get worse. With love and graciousness, things get easier. But also there's this invitation for liberation and for wonder instead of holding on. Okay, we did metta. We listened to some stories. I've got many more, but not for tonight. Comments, questions, concerns? Raise your hand. Let's see what comes. I wish we could do it for you online, but we have to do it in person the way the electronics are working tonight. Anyone? How was this, you know?
Thank you so much. I love George and Martha, those books. You talked about intention, and I noticed that one of the problems in right now is that we're not assuming best intentions with other people. You know, everyone's just assuming that you cut me off and that there's this. I mean, can you speak a little bit, not about my own intention, but about giving people grace with their intentions?
Mm-hmm. So keep the mic for a second, because I want to ask you a question. Thank you for this. This is a really good question. What makes you ask it?
It's a struggle I have. I mean,
With?
it's a practice to come back to not reacting.
And who are you struggling with? Where is that?
Driving a lot of the time.
It's what?
In driving in traffic.
Driving.
On the road.
Oh, God, those people, yeah. And I'm one of them, because I was a taxi driver in Boston for 3 years. I got some very bad driving habits. I apologize. Okay. But, all right, so now picture yourself driving, and some nasty driver cuts you off, you know, or gets upset and gives you the finger and cuts you off. If they can do that, close your eyes. All right. So your concern is with their intention, and they might be just pissed off, right, or something. Now notice how it works in you when you see that and you're upset about their intention. How's that feel? Just notice. What do you notice keeping your eyes closed in your body?
Gripping, like
Gripping, tight.
attachment to the energy.
Yeah, attachment. Okay, you just feel that, no judgment. You're noticing it. Now, let your attention open as you picture that car that cut you off and that person driving badly. And imagine that they just got the news that their child was in an accident, is in the hospital, you know, or that their mother fell and is very sick, or they might get fired, and they're so upset, and they're trying to race and get there. So there they are, they're doing the same terrible action and cutting you off and so forth. How does it feel when you picture it then, and you sense that this could be also happening for them? What happens?
There isn't the tension. I mean, there's...
It releases the tension, because you're not so certain that they're just being an asshole, basically, if you forgive my language. Right. You might even feel compassion for them if you knew their story. So this is great, thank you, and thank you for doing that inside. Here's the thing. You cannot really know the intention of someone else. There's only one person whose intention you can really know. Guess who that is? As Miss Piggy would say, moi, right? And so intention is primarily for yourself, because the intentions for other people can be all kinds of things and you can't really know it. But what you can do and what matters, I think of Thomas Merton, you know, writing to this burned out activist who said, people are acting so badly or whatever, you know, and I don't know if it's going to be worth anything. And Merton says to him, he said, you have to focus not on what they're doing. The work you do may succeed. It may not. It may make things worse. That's not what's given to you. You have to focus on your own heart and on the value and the rightness and the truth, the best of the work you do yourself, and leave it to unfold the best it can. So this is a really important question you asked, and you sort of started to reflect on it yourself, because we can get rather positional when people are behaving badly, and there are lots of them. But we don't know what's behind it all, and some of it may be terrible, and some of it they may be really angry, whatever. But even under that, there's something bigger. And what you get to do is to guide your heart through this world and offer blessings, even so. Thank you for that. Beautiful. Someone else. There's a hand up on the far other side. Here comes a mic.
I just really wanted to thank you very much for bringing me on this journey tonight. I felt like I went through a great deal of inner movement, and through the metta meditation and also the stories, I've definitely been struggling with some things, and it brought me back to a sense of peace, and it really made me feel a lot of gratitude again. I just wanted to thank you.
So thank you. What are you struggling with in general?
A sort of
family, the world,
no,
what?
Just a real kind of an existential angst.
Okay, close your eyes for a moment. You made the mistake of raising your hand. Now you're in trouble. Okay. And tell me when you close your eyes and sort of tune in, because you're not the only one. There are a lot of people who have the feelings of despair or existential, dread or concern or something. Where do you feel it in your body?
Definitely my heart.
Okay. What's it feel like in your heart?
Dense and heavy.
Dense and heavy. So feel that and let it just be there, dense and heavy, and then wrap it with kindness, and say thank you for your concern. You're not judging it. It's actually there because you care a lot. And say thank you for your concern. I appreciate that, thank you. And so you're holding it with appreciation and kindness, not trying to get rid of it. And notice what happens when you do this. Does your heart like it?
Not yet.
Not yet. What does your heart say? That's fine. Okay, what's it say? Don't try to steamroll me with that love, baby.
No, that's not it. It actually just was, I suddenly was feeling very exposed and vulnerable, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I found that when I was doing the metta and I was doing it with myself, that was the most effective thing.
Beautiful, beautiful. And it's hard when we feel vulnerable. And it's also vulnerable for you to have the mic in front of the whole room of people, and that's completely understandable. I remember this cartoon from Pfeiffer. So there's a woman standing there with her arms crossed across her chest, and there's a man kneeling on one knee with his arms outstretched, and he says, "But I love you," and she says, "Don't you threaten me." And the thing is, we have all that inside. I mean, we laugh about it because it's familiar to us. So when we're vulnerable, that's also what you feel. And so you want to hold that vulnerability with kindness and say, I know we're vulnerable. It's all right. Because I think that if you let yourself feel more deeply into the existential despair or concern or something, underneath it is tenderness and grief for the world and so forth. And it's very soft, and those are good tears. They're called the tears of the way. They're not just you were abused, but they're tears because you care so much. And I hear you as someone who actually cares a lot. And then it's very hard to, what was I going to say? It's hard. It's hard to bear. sometimes, but you can. The neuroscience description is that our meditation practice expands the window of tolerance of our heart so that we can bear the depth of our tears and the magnificence of our joy and the humor of our follies and all of those things. And so you're learning that, and that's part of the human awakening in some way. I love the passage at the end of Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha where he's finally sitting by the river. You all read it in high school, right? You know, and he hears all the voices in the river, the manly voice and the happy voice and the weeping voice and the, you know, childish and the vulnerable voice and the whatever. And he said, and then I heard it differently, and I heard all of them together as a kind of harmony. It was the music of humanity, of being human, with all the tears and all the magnificence. And he said, finally I came to peace. Something like that. Anyway, thank you for that beautiful question. Maybe one more before we finish. Don't have to, but you know it's dangerous to raise your hand. But sometimes a brave soul. Yes, Mike is coming.
My husband just said good luck. So.
Hold it close.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't like that.
Take a
yeah,
breath.
exactly.
Good.
I feel very vulnerable.
Stop first. Just feel that. Not a
Yeah.
bad thing. It's very human.
Yeah.
Hold it kindly, metta, compassion, vulnerable. You know, it's just how we are as human beings, and kind of brave to stand up, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, okay, you
Yeah.
feel this. Now what?
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's embarrassing to admit how much anger I've been having about a situation that has happened.
Is it in your family?
No, it's ex-business partners. It's business
yes.
related. It's money related. It's
Yes.
bank related. It's like
Yes.
that. And I keep mapping it on to, you know, what I'm watching on the news with people being dragged away by ICE and arrested and things like that.
And you want him to be dragged away? No.
I do. No.
Revenge,
I will admit
get it.
I
I
mean,
can
it's
hear it.
terrible.
Yes.
It's like I want.
Can I call ICE, by the way? I've got to go somebody for you to haul away.
In my worst
Anyway,
moments,
yes, go ahead. Keep
yeah,
going.
I want revenge. You know,
Yeah,
I
of
do.
course.
And so this has been really lovely because as we sit and loving kindness and, you know, Ram Dass used to say, all you can do for me is work on yourself. And all I can do for you, all you can do for me is work on yourself, and all I can do for you is work on myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that if I really take this in my heart and I work on it, it's possible that I'll get to loving kindness and forgiveness and all of that. Where I'm struggling is, and I've said this to my husband, I feel like I will need to say the truth somewhere. Like I need to write a letter to various people and entities and say the truth about how unjust this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that then I will be able to let go. And I don't know, maybe that's not true. I just don't know what to do.
All right,
with
so
it.
first be in the not knowing. Not knowing is not a bad place. It's actually a place where you learn things. Okay. Secondly, I don't know, is there anyone else in this room who have ever had thoughts of revenge? Don't bother raising your hands. We know, okay. I think it would be really interesting for you to write the letters. I'm not saying you should mail them, but take it a step at a time, because in something you're saying, I need to be witness to it. I need others to see this. You know, it's maybe you want them to see who you are, that you're the good person, and he or whatever that person, I assume it's a he, it could be a she, is the bad guy or whatever. Yeah, that may be so. There are a lot of bad guys out there, by the way. If you want to write letters, I can give you a list. right? Okay, but this is your personal bad guy, my bad guy, right? So you write those letters, and you look at them, and you feel in your heart, and you say, do I need to send this? Is this really going to make things better? And there might be one that you really need to say. And then you look and you say, there are two questions, really. Is it true? Is it kind? Those are the kind of principles for the Eightfold Path, or wise speech or right speech. Is it true? And is it kind? And you look and you say, well, it's kind of bitter, as a matter of fact. So maybe I'll rewrite it a little bit. I want to say this. And then you look, what's my intention? And so what you're doing is you're turning what you're needing to do, which is kind of to release this from your heart, into a practice. And it may be to send it, it may just be to write it, rewrite it a few times. Maybe that you write it and then you do a ritual and you burn it and you say, I'm just ready to let this go. I don't even want to think about this person except to wish them well and we're done. There are all kinds of things you can do. So it's really good that you bring it up because you're not the only one in the room with that. And you can't hurry it. You can't kind of cover it over. Okay, I'll forgive, you know. I still hate him, but I will forgive, right? It doesn't work that way.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's this landing?
It's good. It's good. I want to hurry the not knowing what to do part. Like, I want to know, and
You
I
wanna
want
know.
to do it,
Yeah.
and I want to, because
Guess
I
what?
want it settled.
Guess you want it settled.
Yeah.
So pause for a moment. Just tell me, how hard is it to stay in the not knowing? Mm-hmm. Is it scary?
Oh, yeah.
Is it? Okay, so feel that. Hold it, wrap it with some kindness, because we all have that. Don't know mind, you're staying with not knowing. Ajahn Chah used to say it's uncertain, isn't it? Can you get comfortable with uncertainty right now? It's unresolved. It's painful to feel it. Wrap it with kindness and say, yeah, can you bear it? Can you? Because then it slows it down a little. Then you're not quite so desperate. How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I've never done that before.
Yeah.
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 I've been in some pretty scary places not knowing. And
Yes.
dealt
So
with it.
thank you.
Thank you.
I shouldn't tell this story, but a very close friend of mine, a colleague and a teacher, told me that her best friend, when they were living somewhere in the Midwest or whatever, was jilted by her boyfriend, lover, whatever, in a pretty painful and bad way. And she was so upset. And then he was very pleased with himself because he'd bought a new, fancy new pickup truck. And he lived some towns over, so in the middle of the night, she drove to where his truck was, and she threw a Molotov cocktail into the truck, and it burned. And she drove away. No one saw it. And, you know, some days later, she got a message from her ex saying, the weirdest thing happened. I'm so sorry, but my truck, it all burned. He never found out. And I have to say, even though it was a bad and terrible thing that she did, there was a part of me that smiled about it and said, go girl. You know, we have all these parts. Let's be honest about it. You don't want to do it where you hurt somebody. And you don't want to do it where you hurt yourself. You're better than that, bigger than that, more loving than that. And I see that on your care, and I believe it. But it is fun to tell the story anyway. You got to admit, right? Okay, Lo, so let's sit for a couple of minutes. and return to metta, to the great heart of loving kindness. As you breathe gently, you can hold your own complicated life with kindness, compassion. And you can be a lighthouse, a lamp. Make of yourself a light, the Buddha's last words, and shine kindness. No matter people are difficult, good, bad, everything in between. And in the middle of it all, you can rest in the great heart of kindness and love, because it's who you really are, and it's what we want for this world. And you become that, and it alleviates your suffering, and it tamps down the suffering of others. It's your gift. So thank you for your kind attention, for the brave ones who raised their hand, for all of you. Thank you for the people who bought this book. My publisher will be really happy, and for being part of Spirit Rock online or in person. We need community these days a lot. We need each other. So I'm grateful. Go out in the evening, drive politely if you can. And we'll see you again. And remember, you don't have to eat all the pea soup, all right?